All right. Hello, good day. Today we're delving into chapter 8, which is finance. Finance is my favorite part of the constitution because it deals with our livelihoods and how we all generate wealth and the social sharing of the wealth. Taxpayers typically allocate funds to the government, and the government will decide how they would divide these funds to different departments and use them for different purposes in terms of national development and other investments. So, chapter 8, finance. And section 114 talks about the consolidated fund. And it says, there shall be in Jamaica a consolidated fund to which, subject to provisions of law for the time in Jamaica, shall be paid all revenues of Jamaica. Next point, estimates. The minister responsible for finance before the end of each financial year cause to be prepared annual estimates of revenue and expenditure for public service during the succeeding financial year, which shall be laid before the House of Parliament. So the starting of the financial year, which normally starts April 1st, and March 31st, he shall present to the Parliament, House of Parliament, the estimated expenditure for the year and the revenues the government will generate. So that kickstarts the financial year. And it's important to know that the financial year starts April 1st every year. The estimates of expenditure shall show separately sums required to meet statutory expenditure and sums required to meet other expenditure proposed to be paid by the Consolidated Fund. Next point is authorization of expenditure. The finance minister shall, in respect of each financial year, at the earliest convenient moment, introduce to the House of Parliament an appropriation bill containing under appropriate heads for several services required. The estimated aggregate sum which are proposed to be extended during the financial year. Whenever any monies are expanded or likely to be expanded in the financial year on any service which are in excess of the sums provided for that service by the appropriation law related to that year, or any monies expended or likely to be expended by way of statutory expenditure in any financial year upon new service not provided by the appropriation law relating to the year. Statements of excess, as the case may be, supplementary estimates shall be prepared for by the minister and shall be laid before and voted on by the House of Representatives in respect of all supplementary expenditure. So voted, the minister responsible for finance may at time before the end of the financial year introduce to the House of Representatives a supplementary appropriation bill containing under the appropriate heads the estimated aggregate sum so voted and shall, as soon as possible after the end of each financial year, introduce to the House of Representatives a final appropriation bill containing any such sum which have not yet been included in any appropriation bill. Point 3. That part of any estimate of expenditure laid before the House of Representatives which shows statutory expenditure shall not be voted on by the House, and such expenditure without further authority of Parliament shall be paid out of the Consolidated Fund. So I guess there's some monies that the government typically needs to pay each year, like, for example, education, healthcare, law enforcement, which those would not be voted on because those are statutory expenditures. That's what I'm getting from that. However, other expenses such as planned housing or road construction or something doing with logistics or energy purposes, those may be voted on. And expenditure charged on the consolidated fund or in general revenues on and assets of Jamaica by virtue of the provisions of the Constitution, by virtue of the provisions of any other law for the time being in force, or for the interest on public debt, sinking funds payment, redemption monies, and cost charges expenses incidental to the management of public debt. And the next point is that of meeting expenditure from consolidated fund. Point 1 says, no sum shall be paid out of the consolidated fund except upon the authority of the warrant under the hand of the minister responsible for finance. So it can only be paid from the consolidated fund under the authorization of the finance ministry or finance minister, subject to the provisions of section 3 and 4 of this section. No such warrant shall be issued except in respect of sums granted for specified public services by the appropriation of laws for financial year in respect of which the withdrawal is to take place, for the service otherwise lawfully charged on the consolidated fund. So the finance minister would have to, in the meeting, the budget expenditure meeting, state that he would intend to withdraw from the consolidated fund for that specific purpose, and then he would have to authorize that withdrawal. So he couldn't build a bakery if it was mentioned in the previous budget. He couldn't use the consolidated fund money to authorize a bakery if it wasn't brought up. However, if he had stated that he would construct a bridge, for example, he could use the consolidated fund. He could make that authorize that withdrawal construction of the bridge. That's what I'm getting from that part. And next point is the House of Representatives may by resolution approve with estimates contain a vote on account authorized expenditure for any part of any financial year before passing of the appropriation of law for that year, but the aggregate sum shall be voted shall include under the appropriate heads in the appropriation of the bills for that year. And the next point is contingency fund. The law for the time being in force may create or authorize the creation of a contingency fund and may authorize the minister responsible for finance to make advances from that fund if he is satisfied that there are unforeseen needs of expenditure for which no provision or no sufficient provision has been made by appropriation law. So the contingent fund is like an emergency fund for the government, like an emergency savings account. Is different from the consolidated fund. Contingency fund can be used for unforeseen expenditure. For example, the corona pandemic. Natural disasters such as hurricane would not necessarily be unforeseen. So that would be a part of the consolidated fund, I suppose. But the contingency fund now is different in that these are unforeseen. We don't know, it can be an invasion, it can be an uptake in crime, it could be it's like a national crisis, not necessarily a national disaster that we can predict that is likely to happen. Stuff like that. Next point is public debt. The public debt of Jamaica is hereby charged on the consolidated fund. Yes, so as I was saying, the consolidated fund, this is for expected expenditures. So the consolidated fund would have a portion of it allocated to repayment of the national debt. And the national debt is referred to. National debt is referred to as public debt of Jamaica in this section, sinking fund payments and redemption